Morning. If y'all could come in and sit down, take a seat, grab your coffee, last-minute coffee quickly, and we're going to start. So come on in. All right. Good morning. Come on now. Good morning. All right. My name is Gifford Miller, and I have the great privilege of serving as the chair of the board for the Center for an Urban Future, and it's so great to be here in the Bronx, and thank you all so much for joining us today. And I want to make a particularly big thank you to Amazon for making today's event possible. I think many of you know this, but for those of you that don't, the Center for an Urban Future is New York's preeminent independent think tank that publishes high-impact reports that advance concrete ideas for building a stronger and more inclusive economy in New York and expanding economic opportunity for all New Yorkers. We know that creating a more equitable economy will require a number of new policies and investments, but few things will be as important as ensuring that far more New Yorkers of color can access the well-paying jobs that are growing here. Now more than ever, that means tech jobs. I don't think any other organization has done as much research on how to expand access to tech careers than Center for Urban Future. We've published studies about the need to scale up tech training programs that work, the opportunity to harness CUNY as a launchpad into tech careers, the potential to expand tech apprenticeships, and most recently, the importance of exposing a lot more young people in our public schools to technology concepts. But so much work remains, both citywide and right here in the Bronx. And to shine a light on this opportunity and to tee up solutions, the Center for an Urban Future has partnered with Amazon to convene forums in all 5 boroughs to discuss what actions are most needed to close the opportunity gap for tech careers. And we're so excited to kick this series off here in the Bronx. And before I move on, I want to again thank Amazon for sponsoring this forum series, and we're really thrilled to partner with them. I'd also like to thank Hostos for hosting us. Amazing organization, Hostos, fantastic. And the community organizations that partner with us on today's event, including Big Picture Learning, Bronx Chamber of Commerce, the Knowledge House, Perscolas, Reborn Farms, and Sobro. And now I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Amazon's New York Head of Community Affairs, Carly Graham Garcia. Carly.
Thank you, Gifford. Good morning. As Gifford mentioned, my name is Carly Graham Garcia, and I manage external affairs and community engagement for Amazon in New York City. I'm especially excited to be here with you this morning in the Bronx. Amazon is privileged to have thousands of employees, both corporate and operations employees, living, working, and growing their careers in this borough. As some of you may know, Amazon's been razor-focused on helping New Yorkers access well-paying tech jobs. We often say that Amazon has a job for every New Yorker. In the last 10 years, my company has created more jobs than any other company in the United States. But we're intent on doing even more here, especially through education partnerships with CUNY and other workforce development organizations, some of which we'll hear from today. At Bronx Community College, and hopefully someday here at Hostos as well, we are prepaying tuition for our hourly employees to further their careers in the industry of their choosing through a program called Career Choice. Many choose tech. Earlier this year, Amazon Web Services, AWS, launched a partnership with 3 CUNY colleges to integrate AWS cloud curriculum into key programs of study. AWS and its employer partners work directly with CUNY faculty to prepare students for cloud roles, like technical account managers, solutions architects, and quality assurance engineers. These are early career tech roles in demand from a large bench of employers, not just AWS. Upon completion of this coursework, we facilitate on-campus recruiting events as well. Additionally, last month, we opened a long-awaited CUNY classroom in the lobby of Amazon's newest corporate office. Students from Hostos, Lehman, Bronx Community College will have the opportunity to learn in our building alongside our tech leadership. This partnership is the first for CUNY with a major employer, and it's the first for Amazon with an academic institution globally, and we're doing it here in New York. So what's happening today in the Bronx? Well, down the street at 2505 Bruckner Boulevard, my colleague Danielle Ndedivi is preparing to open the doors of Amazon's newest sub-same-day facility next month. Danielle has extensive operations and supply chain experience and her MBA from MIT. She works here for Amazon in the Bronx. She's hiring and training locally for Bronx residents to learn operations, logistics, and supply chain management from her on the job. And most importantly, today we're going to talk more about how to cultivate pathways for more Bronx residents so they can work alongside my colleague Danielle. Many of Amazon's partners, critical to scaling this effort, are here today, including Hostos, Perscolis, and of course the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development. Thank you to Cuff and to all of you for bringing an open mind and your ideas to today's conversation. Thanks.
Good morning. I am not the borough president, but she is on her way, and she'll be here very soon. We're going to get started with the panel in just a second. I'm Jonathan Bowles. I'm the executive director of the Center for an Urban Future. I don't have a lot to say. I was going to introduce the borough president, and as soon as she comes, we are going to get her on. But I guess I did want to say that, you know, we do a lot at the Center for an Urban Future looking at kind of just what's happening in the city's economy. Where are there opportunities? Where are there good jobs? And it's really striking to us just how so much of where there are good jobs being created in New York, it is in the tech sector. It is technology jobs. You know, over 100,000 new positions in tech just in the last 10 years. It's far more than any other sector. And these jobs, we ought to be thinking of them as the middle class for this generation. You know, these are not all, you know, $2 million a year jobs. There's lots of accessible jobs here, and we have the job in this city to make sure that a lot more of them are accessible, to make sure there's a pipeline for so many more New Yorkers from the Bronx, from every borough, to get these jobs. And we know there's a lot of work to do because right now, the jobs in technology do not adequately reflect the diversity of this city. And as Gifford was saying at the outset, there's work to be done in supporting and growing and expanding the great tech training programs. There's work to be done in harnessing the power of CUNY, and there's work to be done in our K through 12 schools. And that's just the beginning. There's also obviously work that our employers need to be doing. But we are really embarking on this five-borough forum series at the Center for an Urban Future with Amazon's support, because we want to hear from folks in our communities about what they think is needed, what's working, what should be expanded, and really how to elevate this issue and this opportunity and really make progress on it. So I'm so pleased that we're kicking off this first event in our five-borough forum series in the Bronx. We've got such amazing people and organizations working on these issues here. I'm really optimistic we can make progress. And now if I can just have Eli and our panel get this first panel started. Thank you all.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Oh boy. I know we tried this once before, but I don't know if we got the room coy where we need them yet. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
All right, that's a little better. People feel good about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to moderate today's conversation. We'll have two panels today, so please stick around. We'll go right from the first panel directly into the second one. When the borough president joins us, though, we will pause for a moment, hear her remarks, and we'll get right back into the conversation. So my name is Eli Dvorkin. I'm the editorial and policy director at the Center for an Urban Future. I've also had the great pleasure of leading a lot of our research focused on expanding access to tech careers at Cuff. And this is a wonderful extension of that work, being able to have the privilege of being up here with you all today to talk about how we bring these issues home here in the Bronx. So let me briefly introduce our wonderful panelists, and then we'll get right into the conversation. So we're joined today by many amazing folks based here in the Bronx or with real roots here in the borough, including Evelyn Fernandez-Ketchum, who is Vice President of the Division of Continuing Education and Workforce Development right here at Hostos Community College. She manages an expansive portfolio of workforce development and literacy programs here, and her professional and scholarly interests focus on the intersection of education, workforce, economic development, and the impact on young adults. Great to have you with us, Evelyn. Thank you. We're also joined today by James Kale. James is a South Bronx native, currently serving as the Chief Strategy and Operations Officer of the Urban Assembly Charter School for Computer Science, CompSci High. with a mission to gear up students for economic freedom. James is a seasoned educator with experience from K through 12 to higher ed and beyond. And in addition, is the CEO and founder of Kale Solutions, a change-making consulting practice. Great to have you with us, James. Thanks. We're also joined today by Geraldine Rodriguez. Geraldine is the co-founder and CEO of The Knowledge House, which she founded in 2014 to close gaps in digital skills training for underserved young people in the Bronx. Previously, Geraldine coordinated STEM after-school programs at Braven, was the national program director at Students for Education Reform, and worked in the public school system as well, teaching and designing programs. Welcome, Geraldine.
Thank you.
We're also joined today by Debbie Roman. Debbie is looking down all the way down at the end. Debbie is the managing director for Scolas New York, a nonprofit skills training organization founded right here in the Bronx that builds on-ramps for women and people of color into tech careers. She has over 15 years of experience working in organizational development for nonprofit organizations, educational institutions, from Girl Scouts of Greater New York to Europe and many others. Debbie, great to see you. Great to have you here. Thank you. And last, but certainly not least, we're joined today by Osar Mwense Pat Osaje. Osar is the Digital Equity Program Director for the Bronx Community Foundation, which is partnering with organizations across the borough to help expand access to broadband and digital resources. A Nigerian immigrant that grew up right here in the Bronx. Pat Osaje has a background in finance, communications, and a passion for community development.
Good morning, everybody.
Great to have you here, Osar, as well. So, Geraldine, I'd like to start with you. As Jonathan mentioned, there's no industry that's added more middle and high-wage jobs in the last 10, 15 years than tech. But tech has a long way to go before it looks like the Bronx. Our research has shown that while Hispanic and Black New Yorkers make up about 43% of the city's overall workforce, they comprise about just 20% of the tech sector. And in some parts of the tech, like software engineering, it's less, right? And we know that also about 3/4 of those jobs today are still held by men. So we have a long way to go to create a tech workforce that looks more like New York City. And I think that's especially true, here in the Bronx. But at the same time, and I think this is an important point for the conversation, we've made a lot of progress in recent years. It's not like we've been spinning our wheels for a decade. 10 years ago, there was no Knowledge House. And now we're seeing so many programs and organizations that have really grown over that time. So I guess my question for you, Geraldine, is what's actually working right now? What do people need to know about? We've got policymakers, there's staffers in the room, folks that are decision makers in philanthropy, in the tech sector, in higher ed, in government. When it comes to what's actually helping Bronx residents right now prepare for, connect with tech careers, what's working and how does the Knowledge House fit in?
It's a great question because the Knowledge House was created to provide a holistic approach to provide opportunities to everyone in the Bronx. And so that's why we started a high school level program and adult job training, because we saw too many gaps when folks were trying to get from high school to college, through college, and then finally careers. So I think the Bronx, especially focusing on digital equity, is what's working. Especially because of COVID, for the past 3 years, I think everyone is focusing on internet access, digital literacy access, and just creating more bridge programs and workforce development programs so that folks really do have pathways into the innovation sector. And I think you need to start with digital equity, right? In the past 3 years, the Knowledge House has seen the most applications for our programs, and we still weren't able to fill our slots. And that's because folks were really excited to get into tech careers, but they didn't have the digital fluency skills to persist through our 1-year program. So the fact that many organizations are working on this root issue is very important, and I found that, and I see that progress. I think also folks are starting to work together more, and it's something that I always advocate for. I think that the Knowledge House has partnered with various folks here, various folks on the panel. And so as long as we're working together in a coordinated way, tackling digital equity as the root cause, it will lead to more workforce development and economic development opportunities in the Bronx.
Thanks, Geraldine. Well, I want to maybe kind of shift off of what we were initially planning because you really opened up the door to talk about digital equity. So, sorry, let me bring in this conversation. I mean, maybe let's just start a little bit with defining the problem right now. When we talk about digital equity gaps or challenges in the Bronx, what does that look like? What do we see out there in the Bronx in terms of access to the internet, to computers, other devices? Where are those gaps? What does it look like right now?
So first of all, thank you guys for inviting the Bronx Community Foundation to this great panel. We're excited to be here and talk about the great work that we're doing, especially with a lot of the organizations that are here today, too. When it comes to digital equity, as we all know, and sadly, the Bronx is one of the last places for resources being given, and usually the last place where, resources are thought to even be given to. The Bronx is, as the city probably knows, there's a Bronx problem, so we have to figure out the Bronx. And that problem persists. There's a correlation directly with the economics of it and the digital equity. What we find about, and COVID really highlighted that, we found about like 38% of Bronx residents don't have access to broadband and internet in their home. Which also ties, which is higher than the city's digital equity gap, which is about at 36%. So that in and of itself kind of highlights how the Bronx, things exacerbate here in the Bronx. We found about most residents only have access to internet with their cellular phones. That's about 60% of residents get access to internet through regular phone, and about 23% don't have access at all to get into the internet, or either broadband internet in their house or even regular cell phone access. And so that's where it really looks at. That's where we look at when it comes to actually accessibility when it comes to the individual level. However, which is really interesting is that the city does have the infrastructure and the structure itself to provide that. There's a lot of, and that's kind of, again, when we talk about the economics of it, there's a lot of economic disincentive to invest in the Bronx when it comes to these issues. We find here that the Bronx, and when it comes to reliability, when it comes to your cell phone broadband, the Bronx in of itself is also lacking. It is known for, on average, the whole entire borough getting about less than 1 gigabyte, which is about 99 MSP speed of reliability. That's compared to everywhere else, like Manhattan, who has over the whole entire borough 1 or 2 gigs. So again, most people don't have internet in the Bronx when it comes to cell phones or it comes to actual devices. And the ones that they do have when it comes to the cell phones, the reliability of it is actually low. And that's how us here at the foundation want to tackle it. We want to tackle it on a 3 holistic approach. We think about it from the digital literacy, which is actually one of the first major aspect of it, connectivity, being able to actually provide individuals the actual access to internet, and reliability, making sure that the access that they have is reliable. The borough in and of itself has the infrastructure somewhat to do this, to be able to do this. It's what I find in being in this role is seeing a lot of the bureaucracy with it, and the silos within a lot of institutions, either private sector and public sector, who are working on these issues, but they're not talking. So that's kind of how the picture of digital inequity looks like in the Bronx. We have, again, at the borough, we kind of have somewhat of this is our access to internet right here. And that's kind of where you start out. And COVID really exacerbated that. And we saw that during COVID, why that's an issue. When students went to schools, it was then that you realize you can't really do a Zoom call via your phone, right? You can't take classes on your cell phone. And when we realized that when parents had to work from home, students had to work from home, everyone had to work from home, the reliability speed, everyone going on multiple devices, was lower in the Bronx. That impacted how students were being able to learn. That impacted how parents were able to find, when we talk about job careers, find careers for themselves, and parents were able to take care and go to work and things of that nature. So that's kind of how the picture is looking at. And again, from the foundation perspective, we want to tackle it on those three parameters.
That's really helpful. So I want to actually bring James in on this too, because we just talked a little bit about broadband access. We talked about hardware too. What devices are Bronx residents actually able to use to access the internet? But we also talked a lot about digital literacy, and I think, and to Geraldine's point, these are the fundamentals that are needed to be able to pursue further education, further training. It's really painful to hear that there's Bronx residents that would have wanted to participate in the Knowledge House and aren't quite there, to be able to do it, not just because of technology access, but also digital literacy. So I guess, James, I wanted to ask you about this because you've got an amazing group of students there at ComSci High, young people from the Bronx who are our future, who are there to learn computer science, but more than that, to really pursue careers, envision careers for themselves that may take them, well beyond the Bronx as well. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you see that digital literacy piece playing out. When students come to you, ready for high school, but may have never really been introduced to the building blocks of computer science. When you maybe go to neighboring schools and you see they're not doing what ComSci High is doing. They don't have the students, they don't have the opportunities to build sequential computing skills, digital literacy skills over many years to be able to pursue computer science once they get to high school. So I guess I wanted to get your sense of what are we looking at in terms of the landscape of digital literacy in the Bronx, in terms of preparing young people to pursue computing careers, when we know from recent research that while the tremendous success of the Computer Science for All initiative, most schools in New York City now offer computer science. But we also know that most young people still aren't taking computer science. And the gaps there are unsurprisingly, but painfully breaking down along gender and racial lines. So, what do we need to be doing now to boost digital literacy throughout the K-12 system? What's working at Comp-Sci High that could potentially be replicated or built on in other schools around the Bronx?
Absolutely. One thing I would say is we're living in a dichotomous era where a lot of our young folks have grown up with technology in this era, but at the same time, as we just discussed, in the Bronx, there's always delayed reaction or catch up to what that tech looks like. So our kids want to be plugged in, but they don't know what to be plugged into. And so they come just not understanding that. They think they just should have Wi-Fi connection or have a cellular device. And a lot of schools are now implementing Chromebooks, which is great, but Chromebooks also have very limited bandwidth to do anything, if we're really being honest. But that is a nice entryway for a lot of our kids nowadays. I will also say that for Comp-Sci High, a lot of our kids don't come to Comp-Sci High because they're interested in computer science. They come because they hear that we're doing great work. They hear that we're doing great with like ELL students, that we're convenient, we're in Soundview, we're in the Bronx. It's just a high school. That's how many New Yorkers look at a high school. However, they end up many fall in love with it later on, but they're very resistant to understanding the building blocks of what goes behind computation in general. And that's what we're really striving for. When we opened our doors, Comp-Sci High was more so geared towards creating the next tech moguls of the world. So we still have that opportunity for you to get those skills, for you to choose that pathway in terms of gaming, software engineering, as well as game design, graphic design, excuse me. However, we have pivoted that focus to say that one, there's still a big misconception as to what does tech mean. A lot of folks look at tech the industry and not tech the job function, and which is the bigger issue because tech is implemented in all roles. Most of us sit behind a computer and still don't know how to access a laptop itself, but still the fact that that's technological understanding and digital literacy there. And so one thing we have done, which helped us out, is saying that hey, whatever industry you're interested in, that could be dental hygiene, that could be a nail tech, that could be one to be a game designer. There's still tech elements, and we're helping you find that job and build the tech skills for that industry or that job or that interest you have. And so that's what we do. And so to that point, one thing we do is we have individualized counseling on the college side and on the career side. And so more so ensuring that you have a pathway. Just because you're saying you're going to college, you're not thinking about the job force, does not mean that you don't have an industry that you're interested and focused in. And so we ensure that we lean into that. First, in the early years of 9th grade, it's more so exposure. You may not be sure, get exposed to many different things. But as you hone in on that, we make sure it's job matching, really specific to that, as well as the same thing for the college matching process to ensure that it's going. And a lot of schools could follow that. However, for us, each year, because we are an urban assembly school, that means that kids have to take a computer science class every single year in order to graduate as well. And so then you get to choose that pathway, as I shared earlier, of engineering, gaming, and graphic design. And that's some small ways in which you can really lean into that. Because even if a kid does not want to go into a career in that, you have the skills in your back pocket, the certifications you can get. We have many other partnerships that support that. And so either way, students can be successful with tech. But that digital literacy, they don't understand that. They actually don't look at reading that way. And so there's a big disconnect as to what role does tech play in a young person's life today.
Yeah, that's really helpful, James. I want to ask you, Debbie, something a little bit building off of that point, and I think also connecting to what Geraldine was saying. I want to talk more broadly about what Perscolas does, but I want to actually just quickly ask a question about helping more Bronx residents be ready for Perscolas. Because I think we've got a consistent theme here about digital equity gaps leading to situations where there are Bronx residents who might be hungry for the learning and the opportunities that can come with whether that's pursuing computer science in high school or entering into the Knowledge House for a program or coming to Perscolas. But we also know that there's a lot of Bronx residents that are unable to pursue those programs, whether that's levels of digital literacy or just reading and writing or math skills, or in some cases also technology access as well. So I wanted to maybe just start actually, Debbie, asking a little bit about if we as a city want to make sure that a lot more Bronx residents can benefit from Perscolas, which started just a few blocks away almost 30 years ago. What do we need to be doing to change that? And where do you see as the opportunity to be able to partner with other organizations, with the city, with other institutions to make sure that more Bronx residents can benefit from what Perscolas does so well?
Absolutely. And Thank you for that question, because it's very, very important to recognize that everything that's been said here, it's very relevant to really setting people for success, right? We're talking about the digital equity, the digital literacy component, right? You can put a computer in front of someone, but if they don't understand how to work with it or what to do with it to apply for a job, it's worthless, right? It really doesn't meet the needs. So one of the things that, as you started, Eli, mentioning, we've been in the Bronx. We're born and raised here since 1995, and a lot has evolved since then. And one thing we've learned is that the connectivity to our employers and really being that connector and that network to introduce them to the opportunities has been what allows us to be successful in the work that we do every day. But when we're talking about eliminating barriers, it goes beyond just the digital aspect of it or the academic aspect of it. It goes beyond that, because if we look at who we're serving, not only here in the Bronx, but throughout, for those individuals that do need access to this workforce development training, it's also the fact that we are a boot camp style program, as many of us in the workforce tech industry, because we've seen that that's what it's needed to get somebody up and running in their feet and into tech jobs quickly. And what has been proven is we did a study, Perscolas did a study about, let's just invest a $1,000 stipend as they're in the program. And those individuals were quick, at the end of the program, they earned their job quickly after completing the program, because there was no interruption into what their priorities were while they were in the program. For example, they didn't have to worry about putting food on the table or getting yourself to and from the program, and so on and so forth. So we're talking about eliminating barriers by providing and investing in them, not only academically, but also financially, in a way that provides them the space to really understand what is my pathway and career is going to look like once I complete the training program. How set up am I going to be? Look for reliable daycare. Look for reliable transportation. Look for the resources that they need, and eliminating those barriers. What we've done in New York specifically is we really try to eliminate barriers. We were and have been and will always be here in the Bronx. But we've expanded, and the way we've been able to do that is through collective of strategic partnerships. And that allows us to be able to deliver the training from the Bronx into other neighborhoods across the city. So it's really looking at where is the individual is at when they find themselves and they raise their hands to be ready to walk into and step into investing in their academics to enter a career in technology. Where are they at, and how can we get them to where we know they can be at the end of the 12 or the 15 weeks program? And that could include immediately into a job. That could be a job and academic further in higher education. There are so many different options in that way. In 2023, we've grown immensely. I'm happy to say that Perscolas is looking to train 800 individuals this year alone, out of which 200 are from the Bronx. So our investments within these communities, again, continues to look in depth as to how do we continue to eliminate barriers for individuals to understand that this is a career pathway, it's an investment to their future, and that connection with and partnership with others, both the nonprofit sector as well as Amazon as partners and other corporations, are essential to helping individuals in the community to understand the value of what they're doing, not only during that time, but beyond.
Thanks, Debbie. Evelyn, I want to bring you into this conversation now as well. We talked a little bit about the scale of Perscolas, and really Perscolas being one of the largest adult-focused nonprofit tech training organizations in the city, and the great work that Geraldine's doing, just around just a few blocks away as well. But really, when you think about CUNY, there's no institution that's operating at a larger scale to do this work than CUNY. We were talking about almost 250,000 students, right? We got 175,000 undergraduates, thousands and thousands more in continuing education programs. And for many Bronx residents, there's arguably no more accessible, affordable pathway to a career than through CUNY, and especially our community colleges. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the role of OSTOs, of community colleges in general, in preparing Bronx residents for the careers that are growing in the tech sector. Ideally both a little bit on the degree side, but obviously given your focus on the non-degree side, are there specific programs and credentials and certifications that are really working for adults to help folks, or for folks that are in non-degree continuing education programs, that are actually working to help people transition from where they may be when they come to you into careers, technology-powered careers? What's working? Kind of give us a sense of the scale of that. What do you see as kind of the key role of continuing education and community college in building this tech workforce here in the Bronx?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say good morning. Welcome to Genio Maria de Hostos Community College, and on behalf of our president, Dr. Coco de Felipes, we welcome you. She apologizes that she couldn't be here. She's at the President's Council today with the Chancellor, so that's more important, obviously. Nevertheless, this conversation, right? So I do want to thank Cuff and Jonathan Bowles for their leadership in always creating the space and the forum for us to have these important conversations. And I think my peer panel here have placed this conversation into context for us. And I just want to, build upon that we are a 2-year community college in a large system, and we're an open system. That means that we take every student, regardless of where they're at. So I think we needed, that helps frame the conversation for us, particularly here at Hostos Community College. Any student that wants to go to college can go to college here, and we start where they're at. So the role of continuing education and workforce development here at Hostos Community College is evolving as we speak. We've had demands from the workforce side, we've had demands from economic development side, so we're at a crossroads, or we've been at a crossroads. And so what role do we play? And we have to be really cautious and intentional about what we decide to do as a 2-year community college, because we cannot think that we're going to solve all of the problems. And we really have to decide what lane do we stay in, right? Historically, continuing education and workforce development has worked on providing occupational training programs. Or we've evolved, right, from the baking goods to, entrepreneurial courses, personal development, nothing wrong with that. The calling is that now we have to better prepare a workforce. And so what we've done is shifted to become more intentional about what occupational training programs we offer. So we've decided, well, it has to be an industry-recognized credential that holds value for work, that the employer will recognize, and that holds some kind of value for college. So in the tech space, when we started to play around with the idea, it became challenging, because the tech employers would say, well, we want somebody with an associate's degree. Oh, no, but they need a certificate. They don't have that. Oh, no, but they also need the experience. Oh, no, but they also need the bachelor's, right? Sound familiar for those of us who've been doing this for a long time? Listen, no, I'm not, employers, we want to work with you. But I think, we were confused for a while, and we couldn't figure out what to do. We registered a CompT apprenticeship program under DOL, which kind of worked for 2 years. We wound up hiring the apprentices, but then we couldn't engage employers to hire apprentices. So to make a long story short, where we are now is that we're leveraging the citywide credit for prior learning policy. So here at Hostos, yes, and what that means for those of you that don't know is that we're working on focusing closely, working with Office of Academic Affairs and faculty in the right departments, not just any program. So to ensure that we look at what certificate programs can be embedded into curriculum and into the modules of the degree program. Many of you here in CUF has documented this. We cannot afford at CUNY to pile up credits. So the credits that we, under credit for prior learning, that get awarded have to count toward the degree or the major. Okay, so it cannot be for everything. So what I want to do is just give you an example. And James, thank you so much, and thank you for providing the context. When the pandemic came for us, it wasn't about, we needed to figure out how do we get technology broadband is an issue. There are neighborhoods in the South Bronx that when you go into deep, even your phone, it doesn't matter what service you have, your calls will drop. Okay? We had competing, in households, competing for the devices. Mom might have needed it for work, the child needed it for school. So we had to suddenly deploy, figure out how do we get laptops, how do we purchase connectivity, whether it was good or not. Broadband is an issue, and that's another conversation, a whole nother panel with the FTC that we have to figure out. Because that's something that it should, the internet should be like the air that we breathe. But to give you an example of how we're leveraging it, and I'm here speaking on behalf of Ostos, but the citywide credit for prior learning is a policy that we're implementing at each of our campuses, and we have to figure out how we do it and how it makes sense for each of us. Our students, as I mentioned, have greater needs. The local jobs that we have to focus on is, to James' point, is about not tech sector, but what are the jobs, which is just about everything that require tech skills and competencies. So that's what we've had to do. And here in the Bronx, the local jobs, our top 3 employers are mainly higher ed, hospitals, and community-based agencies. So we have a lot of work to do. And even in a job as a medical biller in coding at an entry level, someone is only gonna make about $37,000 here in the Bronx, which we all know is not enough for sustaining themselves in New York City. And our chancellor has a charge that we're trying to work with employers that will minimally offer somebody a job with $42,000. So we have great challenges. But again, going back to, I want to give you the example of, at Ostos, we have 8 credit articulation agreements that if a student takes a certificate program here in continuing ed and they matriculate in the college, they can come in with college credits. Medical billing and coding in the business department gives up to 9 college credits. So our students are saving time and money. But Sam is here, our director of, Sam Mauricio, director of alternative programs and transition to college. And his role is really important because his role is to manage and work with the departments to figure out, well, what certificate makes sense for us to award credit for? Because remember, faculty are going to be up in arms. Well, wait a minute, we can't just give credit for credit's sake. So in medical billing and coding, we're not just thinking about the job. We're thinking about, well, where can our students end up at? So in that one, we're following the trajectory. So with the goal that the student is going to end up at Lehman. They're going to get their AS, they're going to get the certificate, they're going to end up at Lehman, and they can end up in the School of Professional Studies for a master's. So we're having to slow down as a higher ed institution and as a continuing education and workforce development to think more long-term in terms of a strategy for better helping our students to sort of facilitate the transition for our students. And I'll stop there because I can talk about this for a long time.
All right. Well, thanks, Evelyn. Hey, this is a fantastic panel so far, but we're going to pause for just 1 second because we have a real treat. I would like to introduce our next speaker, the Bronx-borough president, Vanessa Gibson. She is really one of the great leaders of our city. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of progress being made in the Bronx. The Bronx is being made safer, healthier, stronger, more sustainable, more equitable, and our borough president has a whole lot to do with it. Everybody, please join me in welcoming her.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And thank you to the Center for an Urban Future, to CUF, to Amazon, and to each and every one of you. An official welcome to Ostos Community College. Always grateful to be in these important spaces where we can talk about our agenda and our blueprint for the great borough of the Bronx. I am excited to be here as the 14th Bronx Borough President. On behalf of my team at Bronx Borough Hall and myself, we are honored to be a part of this very important conversation when we are talking about helping our residents access tech equity, tech justice. and making sure that we are delivering an equitable system when it comes to technology and internet access and connectivity for all of our families. So of course, my gratitude to the Center for an Urban Future, to Amazon, and to all of the partners that are here with us. I do want to recognize the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, ComSci, Perscolas, as well as Reborn and Sobro and the Knowledge House. Many of these organizations and partners I have had a great relationship with over the years. Serving as borough president for just a year and 10 months, but who's counting? But prior to that, I served as a member of the New York City Council for 8 years under the de Blasio administration. And during that time, I came to know of incredible organizations, the Bronx Community Foundation with Dr. Misha Porter, as well as Perscolas and Oates, and many organizations that are serving our youngest students to our seasoned students, and realizing that a lot of this work is about access, opportunity, and education, and meeting clients where they are, understanding some of the challenges that we face in our borough. Our strategic policy plan as a borough is comprehensive, and it is truly a reflection of what we believe is the right direction that our borough must move towards. We are very intentional and purposeful in this work because we have learned during the COVID-19 pandemic, all of our families that were disconnected. When many of our doors were closed, you could not go to your senior center, to your NORC. Students had to learn remotely. It was then that we learned about many of the inequities that we faced in our borough. As it has been said, families that were competing for laptops and tablets or wonky internet service. So we've been working very closely with this administration under the leadership of Mayor Eric Adams and Matt Frazier, the Office of Information and Technology, making sure that we have kiosks and some of the 5G networks that you're seeing across our borough. And we recognize many of these new initiatives are not popular, but I think it's because many of our residents do not understand what we are trying to do. That is why when you talk about tech equity, it has to have an education component. Over the last several years, we've seen well over 127,000 new tech jobs added into the tech sector, and that's great. But we know the barriers that still exist when you talk about communities that we represent here in the Bronx. When it comes to making sure that we level the playing field, that we balance what I call the scales of tech justice, making sure that men and women are embraced in the tech industry. We are talking very ambitiously with Montefiore Einstein about opening the first ever Bronx STEAM school right here in our borough that will model a little bit of Brooklyn STEAM, but it's going to be the Bronx STEAM school. Okay, I love Brooklyn, but I want to make sure we put the Bronx flavor on our STEAM school when it comes to science, technology, engineering, architecture, and mathematics. A few months ago, Mayor Adams was in the Bronx River Houses NYCHA development talking about Big Apple Connect, which is a new initiative that will reach about 60,000 residents and families of New York City Housing Authority, and that's a great start. But it's a start. It's not finished. It's the floor and not the ceiling. It means that we have to do more. It means that we have to go into senior centers and NORCs and talk to our community-based organizations about how our older adults can also stay connected. And while I am not yet an older adult or a senior, I certainly am someone that struggles as well. I was just sharing earlier this morning that my 9-year-old niece helped me share my screen when we were FaceTiming each other because I didn't know how to FaceTime and share my screen. And she helped me. Our young people are learning at a faster rate than all of us. And so we have to play catch up. And we have to make sure that we're working with the administration. Certainly when I think of older adults, I think of Oates, an organization that I was proud to fund in the city council, along with Perscolas, who I love, and the Knowledge House and the Community Foundation. We just had an incredible tech summit a few days ago at Mercy University. And let me talk about the connections and the partnerships with CUNY, with our chancellor, with our 3 public institutions of higher education right here in the Bronx, here at Hostos, at Lehman College and Bronx Community College, because students need to be connected as well. But we also need to make sure that we're working within our infrastructure. How often is the case that we are connected in schools and classrooms, and then when we go home, we're disconnected? So we also have to engage the housing sector and many of our private property developers and owners, and talk about making sure that we address tech equity head on. There are emerging careers that we need to get ahead of when it comes to research, when it comes to technology, when it comes to a myriad of different industries that we are now embracing. We have to stay ahead of the curve, and we have to make sure that these public-private partnerships are investing in our borough. So I am proud of many initiatives, Computer Science for All, that was launched by New York City Public Schools, and recognizing our Chancellor, Dr. David Banks, and the work we're doing in our schools, but also the work we're doing in our communities. We have to make sure in all of these spaces that we are having the same conversations with the same goals. We want families to be connected digitally. We want to make sure that in everything we're doing, we're looking at creative and innovative approaches to addressing the digital divide that we face in the Bronx. And recognizing CUF for this 5-borough series. You started in the greatest borough, I just have to say. Started right in the Bronx, because many of you understand that oftentimes the Bronx is the most disconnected. So the challenges are here, but I promise you the reward is so great when you make investments in our infrastructure, in our schools, in our public housing developments, in our community centers, our classrooms, our open spaces, our rec centers. That is where the greatest reward is. There is so much promise and potential in our borough, and I appreciate everyone recognizing the importance of forums like this. I also recognize the economic development arm of my office, which is the BXEDC, led by our president, Rob Walsh, who is doing amazing work. We are leaving no dollars on the table. We are finding money literally everywhere. $10 million here, $1 million here. And we want to focus on small businesses and focusing on entrepreneurs and MWBE firms and local hiring opportunities. That is where the potential is. All of this work, I want all of you to see from the perspective of economic development, because when you're investing in tech jobs, you are creating pathways for careers, not a job, but a career. There is a difference. There is a difference when you talk about a job versus a career pathway. And that is coupled with pathways to the middle class. So you are not making and earning poverty wages, but prevailing and union wages that provide the stability that families need. So BXEDC, BICNY, Bronx Tourism Council, all of the economic development arms of our office. I want to recognize Marshall Strawbridge, who's here from our team. If you have any questions about small businesses, please see Marshall. Thank you, Marshall. Because we are very adamant about this work. We want to make sure that we leave the Bronx in better hands for our successor. That is what every generation of leaders is supposed to do. So as you think about technology, as you think about equity, as you think about justice, think about the current generation and the next generation. Think about the investments that we are making, not just for the present, but for the future. These conversations are important to have, and I thank you for convening us together to make sure that we are looking at creative approaches, and most importantly, we have to think outside of the box. A one-size-fits-all approach never works for the Bronx, because we are unique, we have different characteristics, and we have different challenges. And if you know us, you understand us, you love us, you appreciate us, but you also know that we strive to do better. As we continue to make progress in our goal to achieve tech equity and tech justice, I think about the young people versus the seniors that we all represent here in the Bronx. Everyone needs attention, everyone needs resources, everyone needs opportunities. So as we continue to partner and work together, continue to open those doors that will lead to incredible career pathways, and most importantly, set our students, our families, our children up for success and not failure. I thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to all of our panelists for your knowledge, for your wisdom, for your expertise and what you bring to the table. When we all work together with all of the knowledge, the power, the compassion, guess what? We are unstoppable. I thank you. I look forward to continued partnerships, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Borough President Gibson. I feel a little burst of energy midway through the panel. You too? All right, let's bring that energy to the second half of our conversation. So, on that note, actually, I want to even just shift gears a little bit. I think, if folks want to, feel free to come on in, grab seats wherever you can. Please do. We've got a little bit of time left before we want to turn it over to the audience for some Q&A. So I want to shift gears a little bit and really start pushing on solutions, what's working that can be built on, can be scaled up. I think there's a lot of appetite in this room and across the Bronx and all over the city to really think about what's next, as the borough president was talking about, how do we build for the future? So I want to really throw this open to everybody. Where do we need to go from here? We've already gotten a chance to talk a little bit about defining the problems, talking about some of what your own individual organizations are already working on, but what do we need to be doing next? What should the mayor of New York City be doing to advance expanding access to tech careers for Bronx residents? What do we want to be seeing? What do you want to see from your members of the city council, from the state legislature, from philanthropy, from the private sector? And I really open this up to everyone. Feel free to jump in. But I'd love to start to move this conversation towards some of the solutions. And I think especially Geraldine and Debbie, for you two, I'm thinking a lot about scale. What is it that government could do, that philanthropy could do in partnership to be able to take what we know is working, but as you've said, there's barriers to entry. It's not possible for every person that's interested in the Knowledge House to actually participate. We also know there's just issues of scale. It's incredible that Briscolas is going to serve 800 people, 800 learners this year, but that's 200 in the Bronx. It's an amazing accomplishment, but we know that there's thousands of Bronx residents that could potentially benefit. I'm thinking something similar in our school systems, where we know that there's huge inequities in terms of there's students that get to benefit from, and as you said, hey, for some students it might just be like it's our neighborhood high school, but they get all the benefits of all the learning, the knowledge, the curriculum development, the connections with the economy that comes from being at Comp-Sci High. And there may be schools, even a few blocks away where that's not happening in the same way. And obviously the digital equity issues that we talked about earlier that are so pronounced in the Bronx. And at CUNY, where we know that there's so much potential, but we also know that many CUNY students that start out at a community college, they never achieve a degree or credential. We know that there's a lot of students that have that ambition to pursue a career in technology, and we know, and as you said, Evelyn, that CUNY is the most wide open front door to that pathway, but not every student actually makes it to that finish line. So want to throw this open to everyone. I think we could spend 15 minutes just talking about this. Ideas for solutions, what's needed, where do we go from here?
I can just kick us off because I think with the borough president shared, there's 127,000 new roles in tech. They're open now, right? How do we get people into those jobs now, right? And I think it's a continuum, right? We're investing on our youth, we're investing in the communities, but the adult education aspect of it, that investment of understanding that we need to invest on our adult population now so they can be the ones taking on those roles now or in the near future is something that is really important to focus on. Right? There has been, and rightfully so, I am a true advocate of young adult workforce development. That's how I started my career. With young adults, no GED, no high school diploma, with 17 to 21-year-old. But being in this role about really preparing individuals to enter a tech career, like it's been shared here, it's a career pathway. It is important to look into the adult population that is now it being mostly impacted by those discrepancies about not getting access to the broadband. They are the ones that need it now. Broadband as a whole, in regards to the digital equity and the tech justice, it has to do with transitioning the mindset of looking at broadband access and digital access as a basic need. Past the COVID-19, it is no longer a luxury that you have to see yourself paying for, right? It is something that in order for you to be a person that has economic mobility within your own community and beyond, you have to have access. It starts with access and equal to everybody. So from that point of perspective, and from Perscola's perspective, we've seen the success of really dedicating our average successful participant is the age 25 to 35. They're already, they have been in the workforce, and they know what's next. They want more. That what they're doing right now is no longer what they need. So really focusing collectively in really developing opportunities to focus both financially as well as resources to these populations that need it now, and they are the ones that are going to be ready sooner in the future to take on these open roles and really have an impact overall.
Okay, I'd like to contribute. So first, I'd like to say to our mayor, don't cut CUNY. We're facing CUNY. So
No cuts at all.
No cuts at all. I mean, you talk about we are the open access. So, I think especially the two-year community colleges, I have to say, and we do take everyone. So we need all the support that we can get. And I have a really specific ask, which may seem a bit off, but if most people here don't know, I recommend to improve the New York City DACA system. For certificate holders, and this is a very specific ask, we do know there are many individuals retiring in, the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, DOT, all of the city agencies have been having a retiring workforce, and where they have thousands of jobs. And these jobs are jobs that our students that graduate, that go from a certificate program to an associate's degree program, could have a city job and could change lives for some of our residents. So it's a very specific ask. I don't know who, if we can connect with those individuals, it would be great. The DACA system is similar to what's happening with the job application process. Our individuals are applying for job, and the applications are going into cyberspace, and no one gets back to anybody, and then we blame the young people or older people for not being motivated enough. So, we need to engage employers in figuring out how do we make that match of our, students with the actual employment opportunities. So that's another ask for employers on our end.
So us at the foundation, I'll jump in and we'll say we have when it comes to digital equity, we have a three-pronged approach, right? Because like you said, it's I cannot understate how much there's an intersectionality between the economic development of a borough and the digital access, right? Mm-hmm. It is literally tied together. When it comes to job opportunities, I like to follow the model I call it the McDonald model, cradle to grave. So you start out at the young age, and I think it's really important as we have educators up here talking about how we are addressing that on the youth, how we're being able to prepare the youth to be able to transition into the tech sector, because the youth are very digitized. However, which is surprising to me that I found too when I was doing this, is that they're digitized, but they're also very digital illiterate. So they can utilize a phone very well, but you ask them to send an email or save a file down and it'll just get lost, which is, for me, as someone who grew up in the 90s, kind of weird, because I grew up, that's all I learned was utilizing technology. So that was very shocking. And again, thank you for bringing up the point about worrying about and considering our older adults and also the adults right now. And that just ties to the economic model and the reliability and the access. Again, understanding that a lot of the Bronx residents are most of them are under poverty. The majority of them make about $38,000 a year. Think about it, $38,000 a year, and Verizon is charging you $100 to just get into the internet. How are you going to do that? You know what I mean? So that in and of itself. I'm sorry about oh, so Verizon. I mean, look, I have Verizon as my own, so we could talk because my bill says otherwise. But we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation after this because my bill says otherwise. But but no, but that I mean, but and honestly, to be quite frank, you know, there is a. Again, I understand. I graduated finance. My major when I went to school was finance entrepreneurship, so I'm very well understand about the economic models of business. I understand. Literally, there is not an economic incentive to invest in the Bronx. So I know you like companies are saying, hey, you know, we charge X, Y, and Z, but if the Bronx in itself residents are under poverty, why as a company will I invest to improve the infrastructure of that place when I know the residents are not really going to be my customers, right? So taking on, really bringing in private sectors individuals to understand that three-pronged approach, right? Digital literacy, connectivity, and reliability. When it comes to connectivity, making sure that individuals can act, like we say digital access is a right. What does that mean? If it's a right, it means that we should have free Wi-Fi everywhere. Like, and again, it's, long story short, and I don't want, again, we can talk about this all day. There is, I think the city in itself and the society here in the Bronx needs to really have a holistic approach and attack it from multiple aspects, right? To work together with our private sectors to be able to realize that maybe we can provide a model where it's not necessarily profit-driven, but community-driven. I know that we have people here from the mayor's office, but I understand, you know, when I got this role, one of the first things I was told to read was de Blasio's master internet plan. And that is a very interesting internet plan to me because what it did was it put community first. The new model, and again, I'm so grateful for Big Apple Connect because it's doing something. It's putting, you know, people in the internet, but again, if you guys are familiar with the program, it's a stipend. So, and it's a stipend connected to Time Warner. Yeah. So in and of itself, that by default, you know, if Time Warner, and again, the Bronx only has, for the Bronx, we only get 2 of the main providers because of the oligopoly of the internet sector, of how it's provided. So as an individual, I can only go to, I think it's Verizon and Time Warner here in the Bronx, I believe, right? Altice, there we go, yeah, Altice. Right, and then so I'm now like my reliability is dependent on that. I don't have the freedom to go and look at a Verizon and see Verizon has its better, or T-Mobile, or any of the other big 4, right? So I think that's one of the things we need to talk about is being able to kind of, again, have that holistic, multi-pronged approach. Then talking about the digital literacy on the youth. One of the good things I like about what you guys are doing is introducing competitive thinking, not only on the computer science end, but throughout all academic forms. Luckily enough, we're talking with the foundation is talking to Digital Promise, which used to be, I forget the name, it was an Obama-era policy that became Digital Promise. And one thing they would like to do is put out, basically, rechange curriculums here in the city that purposely introduces students to competitive thinking. We find that if you want to, again, like you said, it's hard to get students to go into tech, but they're also already into it because of the knowledge gap when they get into it, like at high school level. But if you start at a preschool, high school, and you're already thinking in that framework, that mindset of competitive thinking of numbers in a solution-oriented way in all aspects, when you make that transition into computer science, which is a very difficult career path and difficult academic path. I remember going to college, like computer science majors, a C+ was actually like an A in them because of how difficult it is. You know, a B, you're definitely getting the job. So understanding that, like putting that mindset at a very young age, again, cradle to grave, helps us go a long way, and I don't want to take up more time.
No, also, I appreciate this, and James, I want to bring you on the student. I just wanted to say, you know, to connect the dots a little bit, also to underscore the role of CUNY in all of this. You know, we published a report very recently looking at opportunities to build on computer science for all, and the key recommendation was really to invest in, I think, a relatively little-known program at CUNY called CITE, Computing Integrated Teacher Education, that's training future teachers to be able to integrate computing education no matter what they teach. Yes. And that program has immense potential because about 1/3 of all new teachers in New York City public schools come from CUNY. But right now, fewer than 5% of new teachers are actually equipped to integrate computing into their pedagogy. So I just thought that was an amazing opportunity, but one that's still just at the very beginning phases. Anyway, James, other thoughts about, especially around K through 12? Yeah.
So I think you read my mind, Eli, because I was going to talk about something similar. And I'm happy we're finally talking about solutions, because I believe if you're in this room, you already understand and get the plight that we're facing in the Bronx. And the reason why I name that is because I feel often, I'm pretty sure you as my peer leaders, feel that my job is actually convincing others about this often. Not just others in the world, but even teachers to understand that. So I love that you just named that, because while we're talking about how to get young folks better oriented to tech and tech jobs, tech careers, who's going to teach them that? We have to put pressure in philanthropy as well as on the government to put teacher training programs to really make that happen for our teachers. For example, I know I'm so glad we reversed that decision immediately, but when ChatGPT and AI came out, we immediately said no. And David, the founder of ComSci High, and myself immediately was going to write a publication saying, of course, we should not do that. And of course, the first group of people who's going to fall to and fail with AI is the Bronx. And so something that we did at ComSci High was teach our teachers how to use ChatGPT. Teach it to the best of ability about how this is how you can implement it in your subject, your content area, to make you a better teacher. So you can also teach kids that. It is not plagiarism yet, right? Because we're going to get there shortly. It's not plagiarism yet, but how do we teach kids to actually use this for your benefit? Most kids nowadays is like, okay, if you do this, it generates an answer for me, let's submit that. So that's not plagiarism, like I said, yet, but again, it's how you use resources. They're not used to that. They're not used to looking at encyclopedias as a resource to better your answer. And that's what ChatGPT is. And so we need to do a lot more like that through philanthropy and through the government. And the second thing I would say is we should put pressure on companies or businesses in the community to work with schools. And that was, and that would really change the nature of the Bronx in general. I don't know about you, but young folks nowadays, they don't really care about the Bronx. They don't have the Bronx pride that maybe you all had or I had growing up in the Bronx. Still have it. They don't have that New York City pride. And so if we really change that, put that pressure on these different businesses to work with schools, kids get jobs. There's more, you can tie it and they can get paid to work. It's not just white collar or service oriented. It will change the motivation for school and make school more applicable. I would say across the band, there's always been, why is this important to us? But I can say more now today, kids are asking, how does this help me? What are we doing with this? Again, their attention span is a lot shorter. They want to know the answer. They're a lot quicker. They don't want to play chess. They don't want to do the strategy. So let's help them get there. Let's make that happen, make that connection, and that would easily change a lot of the fight we're really struggling with in the educational system at this current point.
Thanks, James. Geraldine, other thoughts about where you'd like to see the city go from here? To help the Bronx?
I'd love to emphasize strategic partnerships as a solution. Everyone has mentioned it today, and I think that if we work together, we can do more at scale. If we're asset-based right now, there are a lot of resources in the Bronx. There's a lot of lack of access, but we're all here providing the education that our people need. Imagine if we actually work together so that we're like building on each other's work. CUF published like a report a few years back, and they actually did an asset map of all of the tech education resources in New York City. And there are so many, right? Literally from digital literacy at your regular neighborhood settlement houses to bridge programs to workforce development and even K-12 STEAM programs. So we know that folks are doing great work, and we just have to raise awareness so that Bronx residents especially take advantage of these opportunities. So that's one. But also imagine if the government or philanthropy actually incentivize partnerships, right? We obviously need to invest in CUNY because it's a systemic solution, and so many Bronx residents are attending the 3 CUNY schools. But imagine if community-based organizations received money to work with CUNY at scale. Sometimes I feel that investments focus on CUNY only, and I would like to see more dollars for partnerships. During the pandemic, Knowledge House students were CUNY students. Like for the first time, the majority of our job seekers were coming from CUNY. But I do experience some philanthropists saying, well, I'm funding CUNY, so I cannot fund you, nonprofit, right? And we need to really be holistic, work with each other, and we're all serving the same Bronx resident. And so we can talk about like shared data systems, right? Imagine literally if there was one student ID that the Knowledge House had access to, Perscolas had access to, and HOSOS had access to, because that person is going to all of our programs. And we are all accountable to helping them get a job, right? And so we should be sharing resources, we should be sharing data, and I think partnership work is so hard to fund. We need government and philanthropy to provide the incentives so that we work together.
Thanks, Sherilyn. We have a couple minutes before we're going to turn over to the audience. I just want to say, keep on this theme. Any other 30 seconds, concrete kind of solutions, recommendations, concrete ideas that you think folks should take away from this conversation?
Just one last one that just probably ties all this together, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that has said. I think the investment of the corporate partners in the city and the government to understand who they're serving and how to help them get into those jobs is understanding where they're coming from. Because we have a responsibility, we're committed to our mission on getting them trained, getting them prepared, giving them the resources, the tools from K-12 all the way into higher education and workforce development. But the understanding, what we need more of or a better understanding of is how the corporate partner will continue to support the growth of that individual, understanding where they're coming from. Because if not, we continue to set them up for failure because they still are learning what that environment is going to be as they continue to grow in the tech careers.
I do have one last comment, just because computer science for all has been mentioned a lot, and I think that it's very important to prepare teachers to provide this access, but little kids also need to see themselves working in tech. So we need to take them out of the classroom and we need to send them to companies, right? Pre-COVID, a lot of corporations did job shadowing days, and since COVID, I haven't seen a lot of employer engagement in K-12, and if we really want our kids to study computer science, we need to bring industry people into the classroom, and we need to get the kids to these companies. So we need to do that. That needs to be a part of computer science for all somehow, but that's how you're gonna get little kids to actually be technologists and be architects, everything.
Yeah, and I would like to echo that point actually, because of what we found is that works actually. When corporations were, and I believe Amazon actually does this, I believe, within the Bronx with certain high schools, or I believe they did prior, maybe before COVID, with certain high schools, being able to work with students and being able to not only shadow but provide internships and, or some type of program. Those kids get to, it's a easy funnel pipeline, and what it really does is again, what originally, again, I don't want to give my age, but when I first learned about the tech industry and seeing the evolution of it, it was, in my opinion, very a wild, wild west. You didn't need a higher education. You didn't need a college degree really to enter. You needed certifications, which, again, I would not want to emphasize the economic ties to this opportunity ties, right? So if you don't need to go to college, that's great, actually. If you can just go take a program from Perscolas, from the Knowledge House, and you've had an internship at that corporation, at an Amazon, at a LinkedIn, at a Facebook, Meta, or X now at high school, when you get to college, maybe college might not be an option, and that might be a good thing because you would then have an opportunity to go right into the workforce. And that in and of itself, and I know Europe was I believe Europe, someone mentioned Europe. Europe is one of the most important aspects that I've known about personally for friends and family who've utilized it to enter the workforce, where college was not an option for them. And for the borough of the Bronx, I think that's a very important aspect to try to target students, especially for corporations, that partnership at the K to 12 level. So yeah, I agree with that. It's a very strong solution.
So I'd like to add, in June of this year, we held our president-initiated industry summits. Last year was healthcare. This year we focused on cybersecurity. And we had individuals that work in the FBI, the Federal Bureau, come. And to your point, James, earlier, the focus was that all of those individuals did not go in having a tech background. They all went in very different routes. So to summarize, we really need to turn, this conversation on its head, that it's about having the competencies that the individual needs to be able to get hired. Here at Ostos, one of the things that grew out of the Cybersecurity Summit is that as we're developing that program as a degree program, we're including in the cybersecurity curriculum computer science courses. You know, how do you add discrete math into some of the courses? A+, so that the student eventually leaves us, you know, even if it's the modules that get included, and faculty are involved, the industry is involved, and, you know, academia is academia, so it's going to get time for these things to get approved. Here at Ostos, we do have computer science degree programs that our students transition to City College and City Tech, but it's going to take time. And I think that for us, again, is being intentional and thoughtful about engaging industry. As I always say to employers, we don't want to know about the jobs that you're looking to fill tomorrow. We want to know about the trajectory and the careers for the future careers. Like, what is it that you need to partner with us to be, you know, how do we change curriculum to enhance it? I mean, over the lifetime of a young person, of an individual's life, we have all learned that a college degree is going to give them more earnings. I mean, I know college is not for everybody, but more than 50% of our students work and go to school. It is the way of life. For many of us, education has been what has transitioned us to move into middle class. And that, you know, research has been showing. So I think we, you know, while someone may not do it in the same direct way, we need to be able to offer various ways, because students are already doing balancing life, work, and lifelong learning. And we just have to figure out how do we help our students navigate all those areas. But so that, I mean, that's what we're doing here at Ostos. Again, being intentional, working with the Office of Academic Affairs, and the faculty are critical, because, you know, for them, they got here, they came to teach, because we want people to have a bachelor's degree and a PhD, and not everybody's going to do it, you know, the whole trajectory, but minimally if they can leave us with an industry recognized credential and an associate's, and in a position to be able to decide whether they want to later on go on to college and have a bachelor's degree. We know that that's transformative.
So thanks, Evan. Let me jump in because I want to get our room involved. So I've kind of put a pin in it. It's a wonderful conversation. We have folks from my team that have microphones, so throw a hand up and let me know if you have questions. They'll come around. I'll call on folks. Just say your name, folks, affiliation, and we can get a really quick questions. That would be great. We'll try to hear as many as possible. So we can start on the far side there. Then we'll come over to the left, right there, and then April in the front. So that's the first three. 1, 2, and 3.
Hi, my name is my name is Kim Kendall. I'm the Associate Dean at Lehman College. We've talked about tech careers and the need for faculty, which is crucial. Also, the access to industry software and industry equipment when it comes to technology training. So maybe the panel can talk about how they've overcome the barriers to get access to industry software and equipment to make sure our students are prepared for the workforce.
Yeah, and can I just add on that? I'd like to hear where we should go next. So I mean, it's good that these things are happening, but what's needed now would be really helpful, I think, to hear.
Well, I'll kick off. We're not even talking about artificial intelligence, right? We started to, James, and we're trying to deal with that now, you know, getting past, not being able to see from it in the academic setting that it's not something that you're going to use to plagiarize, but rather it's a tool. So we're going to need, you know, I'm in conversations now with consultants to figure out how do we unpack this in a way that it makes sense. And it's like, I remember when the internet first started and I was fighting it, I had, you know, I'm going to date myself too. Like, I had to spend the first 2 hours of my morning looking at emails and responding versus calling people back. So I think we're at a point where we have to figure out, we're going to have to train. So from a workforce perspective, I'm thinking about the staff, my staff. I need to educate them on artificial intelligence and how do we embed that and include it in our own curriculums for occupational training programs. But we need to educate ourselves and kind of get rid of the fear, you know, so we need more education around the technology and how we use it as a tool, because it is ahead of us, and we're trying to play catch up still.
Thanks, Evelyn. I think we should actually just get to another question. I'd just tell you also, our research has shown that there's such an incredible, CUNY's been so successful in boosting the number of students pursuing technology degrees. The pace at which CUNY's been able to hire faculty to keep up with that has lagged behind, and so there's a real need to invest in those faculty lines. So I think the next question was on the left side of the room. Thank you. Yep, thanks so much.
Hi, Louisa Tatum from the New York Public Library's Career Services Office. What we've noticed is that we have a lot of monolingual adults coming to us who are looking for job opportunities, looking for training, and there's a huge barrier because English is the predominant requirement. So I know community colleges, predominantly are supporting people who are monolingual and providing education, but employers are not, and a lot of job training programs are not. Right? There are only probably 2 training opportunities for people who specifically speak Spanish, and that would be like HHA or something related to like maintenance. So when we're talking about this tech conversation, tech is sometimes numbers and coding. How do we support people in finding job opportunities who do not speak English?
Ooh, that's a tricky one, but I think Perscolis is probably showing how to do this. I'm gonna let you guys answer that.
Thank you. I think this is where the strategic partnership that is mentioned comes into play, right? We have become, at some extent, subject matter experts, have this recipe for boot camp style training programs that get people in those jobs within 12 to 15 weeks, and then they go into these careers. So I think what you're asking, it's really, really important because it goes back to we can do the job on training them. We can partner strategically with other organizations that can do that work of either translating or delivering the training in their own language, but then we will then face a different barrier, which is still there. And it's about really understanding where are the people we are training are coming from so that the employer can successfully incorporate them, and that diversity, equity, inclusivity, and belonging actually happens when they are on the job, when they are in that space. So it's in a place where it is relevant given the nature of where we are and the fact that we are New York. And it's really important, but it has to be strategically developed with and in collaboration with partners, so we can all bring what our expertise is, because it's not only the language barrier, is potentially additional social services or additional different resources. So really looking at how we can best collectively and collaboratively support the individuals. We can do that work, but the employer and the corporate partner needs to be at the table as well, so they can understand what are the programmatic aspects that they need to implement in HR internally in the data and sourcing to really be able to support that individual to be successful once they get to the job. Because you're right, the certification is not going to change. It's about numbers. The test is the test. The test is also in English, and it's looking at what exactly are the barriers. It went for monolinguals to really get access to this information, and it's not just on the training delivery aspect. I think it evolves from a lot of different areas that can really set them up for success.
Thanks, Debbie. I think that's all the time we have in this first panel, so our audience would join me in a round of applause for amazing panelists. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
We could go for another 6 hours. And everybody, please hang into your seats because we're going to move just directly into our second panel. So if our second group of panelists could join us, Abby and the council members as well. Thank you all so much. And we'll have a little more time for some questions in the second panel. So we're going to get right into it. We can even cut that house music, please. We're just going to get right into the second panel. This is not the time for mingling. We'll have more time at the end. Yeah, great. No, thank you so much for your help. It's great. All right. If I could have our group of second panelists join me on the stage. Hey. Hey, thank you so much. You can put your things in the seat. I'll stay here. Yeah, so anywhere you like. It's great. Hey, Abby.
There are, this is an interesting.
Excuse me. Can we please,
Are you gonna assist?
excuse me. We'd like to get going.
Ladies and gentlemen, folks, please grab your seats. We are going to kick off the second panel right about now. So please, if I could have everyone grab your seats. Folks in the house, please, in the back, please, if we could have your attention for a few more moments. Thank you. Come grab your seats and join us. Thank you so much. All right. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today at Ostos Community College. It's a pleasure to have you both, all three of you with us. So I'm going to briefly, I'm Eli Dvorkin, the Editorial and Policy Director at the Center for an Urban Future. We've just had an amazing first conversation here today all about expanding access to tech careers for Bronx residents. And we're here to dig in a little deeper in a second panel with folks working in government on these issues and many others every single day. So I'll briefly introduce the three of you and then we'll get into it.
Great.
So we are joined today, I'll start in the middle with Councilmember Amanda Farias, who represents the 18th Council District here in the Bronx.
Yeah,
Yes, hold for applause.
the mic is hot, y'all.
She's the chair of the Committee on Economic Development, the co-chair of the Women's Caucus, and prior to her election, she served as assistant director for the Consortium for Worker Education, where she oversaw workforce development programming in the Bronx as well. So welcome, Councilmember. Great to have you with us. We're also joined today by Councilmember Piorina Ana Sanchez. Welcome, who represents the 14th Council District as well in the Bronx. Prior to her election, she served in the Obama White House as an urban planner at the Regional Plan Association, a senior fellow at the Pratt Center for Community Development, and an advisor in the mayor's office, where she advocated for progressive housing policies, economic development policies, and resources for NYCHA, among many other things. Welcome, Councilmember. Great to have you as well.
Thank you so much.
And last but certainly not least, we're joined by Abby Jo Siegel, who many of you in this room know from her time working here in the Bronx, but now is the executive director of the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development, where she executes the city's vision for an inclusive, equitable economy where New York City residents are positioned for career success. She was the founding CEO of Here to Here, a Bronx-based organization helping New York City students achieve career success. And she also served as executive director of the James and Judith K. Diamond Foundation and as senior vice president at Enterprise Community Partners. Welcome, Abby. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here.
So, Councilmember Farias, I'd like to start with you
Sure.
as chair of the Committee on Economic Development and also in the middle of our panel right now. You really have a bird's eye view on the growth of the city's tech sector. You also have hands-on experience in workforce development, and I think can see from firsthand how challenging it can be to knit those things together. So I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the most pressing needs right now in the Bronx when it comes to expanding access to those 127,000 plus new jobs that have been added in the city's tech sector?
Sure. I think first and foremost, and I've somewhat, when I do panels like this, I do feel like I'm preaching to the choir in the room with this. It's about the pipeline creation, and that really means like how are we starting from students at 5th grade level and figuring out their interests and not losing them within the system so that they can figure out and plan how to go into a career in technical education high school, if that's, the trade or the vocation that they would like to work within, and really just figuring out where the foundational steps that we're lacking. Something I've been speaking about 2 budget cycles in a row is how do we have like a driver's ed for all push back into our 5 boroughs? Really, a driver's license can stop you from working at an airport, working in a union, working at the post office. It's really a foundational core credential that you need these days. And so us working together to figure out what are those core credentials that we can set young people up really early with is important, both in the tech sector, but also just in our trades. And then additionally, figuring out for the Bronx, where we are a healthcare hub, and we see life sciences really being bolstered throughout the 5 boroughs. Particularly, we have an opportunity here to make real investments, finding those pipelines either in our high schools or in our colleges, getting the out of work, out of youth folks that have an interest in that sector into the right training methodologies to put them into the workforce. I think that is critical in this area. Then I think on another aspect, and what I think we're hoping to do in the council, is really looking at our industrial sector and our manufacturing zones. I think infrastructure is a core component in ensuring that we have the spaces to meet the demands to encourage the workforce to stay within the Bronx. And so if we don't have tech spaces, we're going to be less competitive in our market and bringing companies here or having the companies stay here when they're able to expand. And so in the council, we have, I have a manufacturing zone bill that we're looking at how to create development action plans for each of those manufacturing sectors to see where are the challenges, where can we have more investment, where can we convert those spaces? Because we're actually losing in the tech sector to like New Jersey, who has tax breaks and different forms of monetary ways to be competitive with New York. And we don't want to lose the companies here, right? If we're going to take the necessary steps to create the pipeline and streamline people into those areas, we're going to make the right investments, like the mayor's office. Pardon, this mic is very close. Like the mayor's office is working really hard. It's just like I can't even cough without y'all really hearing it. To ensure money is going into the right places, like our hospitals, like our life science sector, and we ultimately need to make sure that we're looking at this in a holistic view, where we're also creating the space, expanding the space to keep the businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit here in New York City, and particularly the Bronx.
Thanks, Councilmember. Councilmember Sanchez, I want to ask you a little bit about something that that your colleague mentioned a little bit in terms of the education pipeline and starting young. And I think you mentioned 5th grade, and I would say maybe it needs to start in kindergarten, you know, but thinking a little bit, and you're on the education committee as well, I know, and you've long been an education advocate. So let me ask you about this. When it comes to computing and technology education specifically, how's the city doing for residents of your district? Do you see, you know, equitable computing education happening? What more would you like to see happen in the future?
No, and I appreciate the first panel and some of the first speakers speaking about computer science for all, speaking about the strides that the city has made, but no, right? We're not there quite yet. You know, the goals are in place and the intentions are in place, but we're not there quite yet. With 17% of our schools reaching the equity goals, you know, to make sure that there's access for girls, for Black and Latino students. That is my district, right? We are 98.5% people of color, Latinos and African Americans in our district. Our median income for the adults, right? The adult worker is $24,000 per year. Can you imagine how folks are making ends meet? We're mavericks. We're amazing. We're an incredible district. No disrespect, because I love the whole Bronx, but we're the best, right? Because we are creating possibility where really none should exist based on the metrics. And so we need to see more of that investment. We need to see more of that pipeline, and it's so much to the extreme that, you know, we're in a space here where there is a growth mindset. The tech sector is booming. The tech sector is growing. We have so much. We have only up to go. But on the other side of this is the fear, right? Just last week, we had a hearing in the Finance Committee to re-up a biotech tax credit. It's up to $75K for a business that is starting up in New York. You know, 75% of the folks have to live in the city, and there's up to $3 million available for businesses who meet the criteria. And what's my question? My question is, like I said, I represent a district that is 98.5% people of color that does not have access today to these careers. So am I, in supporting something that is beneficial and a boon, could be a boon to the economy of the city of New York, am I doing a disservice to my district? Well, thanks to all of your work, I don't think that's the right way to think about it, and it certainly isn't, but we have so much work to do so that a thought like that never crosses a policymaker's mind, right? We want to grow as a city. We want to make sure that the incumbents, that the folks who live here now, we are benefiting and we are growing our folks' talent.
Thank you, Councilmember. Abby, let me ask you a little bit about your experience in the Bronx. I know Here to Here wasn't so far away, and we leading that organization, really helping building career pathways for young people. And in particular, thinking about ways that could lead to careers in technology, or at companies where technology was going to be such a key component of the job. So I guess I'd love to hear from you a little bit about what is working in the Bronx when it comes to expanding access to tech careers. What should we be doing now to help build on that impact?
Thank you. It's so great to be here, by the way. I miss taking the subway up here every morning, so I'm trying to do my best downtown to represent the Bronx as best I can. But thank goodness you have such good leadership here and the leaders today. And the panel that was on before, I mean, it's pretty incredible. When we first kicked off an event on career pathways here at Hostos, I believe it was 2016 or 2017, The Knowledge House was just starting. There wasn't yet a Bronx Community Foundation talking about digital equity. Perscolis was still just in the Bronx. It's just amazing to see the growth of the many organizations here and how much good work is happening on the ground. So I say there's a lot happening that's really amazing. And I love the conversation when we talk about asset base. The Bronx has so many assets. I also loved hearing the borough president talk about, the Bronx is unique, and it's not one community, it's many communities that are coming together and incredibly powerful. And then having incredible leaders in the council and at the state really thinking about how do we create digital equity, both the physical infrastructure as well as the classes, curriculum, and creating the pathways. So I would say there's a lot of incredible things. Like Comp Sci High, I remember when they were just like trying to figure out what to do in our offices at Here to Here, and now they're up here really showing the way of really embedding career success beginning in 9th grade, getting kids out of the classroom to do that work. They're pioneering, and we're seeing it really picked up in other places, such as the major announcement last fall by the Chancellor Banks to really do career-ready modern youth apprenticeship and future-ready, focusing on technology. Now that needs to be not just at some schools, and now it's at future-ready is at 100 schools. The modern youth apprentice is at 60, I think, schools, but really to every school and really looking at it in terms of equity. So making sure that it's in your council district. So I think there's a lot of really good things, but again, when we look at the numbers and we aggregate the data, and particularly when we do so in the tech sector has grown tremendously. And I love the fact that everyone was talking about not just tech jobs, but all the jobs that sort of require tech, and making sure that we're really, really creating the computational thinking and digital literacy that's so critical for that. But really making sure that we're thinking about that, where we need to be and what's going to get us there, and we're disaggregating the data and making sure that we're not just looking at it citywide, but we're looking at it council district by council district, school by school, because we know that one of the things that happens in New York City far too often, because we're a great city, we create a lot of wealth, is it doesn't always happen equitably. And unless you disaggregate the data, we're not going to get to those young people, those seasoned, I love that, seasoned students, those seasoned students that could really benefit and really is the purpose of why many of us are in government.
That's helpful, Abby. Well, let's talk a little bit more about then some of the specifics here. And I think I'd like to turn this over to both of our council members. The Bronx delegation has collaborated on a lot of things recently. One that struck me was bringing a dedicated bio bus to the Bronx. If folks don't know about that program, amazing initiative. Actually physical laboratory space within a bus that's mobile, and now the Bronx is going to have their own. And we heard the borough president talking about the idea of a Bronx STEAM center, and this is actually something that the Center for Urban Futures recommended, the power of the model of the Brooklyn STEAM Center based in the Brooklyn Navy Yard and replicating that in other parts of the city. So I guess my question here is, when it comes to learning and career-connected learning and training around technology, as well as potentially technology access, whether that's broadband or hardware, other things, what else are there things that you look at, you see maybe other districts have that you don't have in your districts, or where you see there's something that's going on in Brooklyn or in Manhattan that you think we should bring this here, replicate this here, or potentially other things that are homegrown that you just think, hey, we've got something in our district, this should be Bronx-wide. I'm kind of curious, what are some of those things that you think either need to come to the Bronx or deserve to grow in the Bronx? I'd love to help the audience understand what are some of the things right now that we should be building on, adapting, expanding when it comes to building this pathway toward technology careers.
Madam Chair.
First, I'd want to say is we're super excited about BioBus. BioBus in and of itself is, like, as you mentioned, a fantastic laboratory that basically goes school to school on their campus and makes it tangible and realized for a lot of students. And what I do want to also say, even though the BP is no longer here, the borough president also made sure to prioritize looking at how to bring more technology into our schools. So last budget cycle, a lot of us worked with the BP to ensure that we were bringing new technology, new computers, new laptops, but also, like, her and I put in a bunch of hydroponic labs in a bunch of our schools.
We thank you for the snaps wherever that came from. So there's different ways that we're being able to look at our budgets and look at our schools and where there's deficit and how we can work together to do that. So the BP splitting a lot of those technology opportunities with us meant that we could reach almost every single school because we were splitting the cost. So that was a great opportunity for us. And I think that really is the thing that I've saw in other areas. I get to kind of sort of rep Comp Sci High still. They're in my district and they're expanding, so that's really great. But folks, having hydroponic labs and being able to create the greenery that they get to then bring to the table is just life-changing for a lot of our students. And that stuff happens in a lot of other districts and not necessarily mine. We don't have a lot of community gardens or open green space for students to be able to grow anything or put their fingers in soil. And so being able to bring these different tech labs or STEAM labs or hydroponic labs is something that I saw happening in other areas that I wanted, where there was space available and principals that were ready to jump in with me, take advantage and bring back to the district.
Yeah, I would kind of expand on that. I didn't know the BP did that with all of us. Yes, we were able to bring, upgraded equipment, hydroponic labs to so many of our schools. But I also, I think, maybe it's because of what's in my district. You might know that my district is home to the Kingsbridge Armory. Woohoo! Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I can't help but look at that castle that, I call the towers Rapunzel. One is Rapunzel's tower. One is where the sentry sits to defend us all. That's all in my head. But, I think about these spaces that we have in the Bronx that could be home to some of these careers of the future, to this training of the future. And so right now, the Kingsbridge Armory is ripe for this sort of thinking. So we just had a process where 4,000 people, largely from the community, but also from all over the Bronx, participated. They said, here are the 4 industries that we want to, we think would be a good fit within the Armory because we can't have housing, because we can't have schools, historic landmark designation, and limitations that come with that. And of course, tech was on that list, right? And so now that that community report is out of the door and the RFP is open, yesterday, we had our first information session. There were 200 people on that information session. There's tours today with hundreds more participating. There is interest to bring this sector into the Bronx, to grow the opportunities for our kids. And the Kingsbridge Armory is one place, so please spread the rumor, make sure even more people apply, to make sure that we are made an offer that the council cannot refuse. But there's also other areas, right? In my district, again, there's the Fordham Landing. Fordham Landing could be the site. Right now, it's one of the only places, the only place in my district, let me just correct that is completely open field, right? It's the foot of the 207th Bridge. You might know where Target is on 225th Street, but from Target all the way to the 207th Bridge, there is nothing there. So there are ideas and proposals, and there has been a development team that has done site assembly to propose 3,000 units. They're talking about the future of the gaming industry, taking foot in the city of New York, right there on the foot of Fordham Road. So there are these spaces that I think are very important. But also, just thinking about I go back to the beautiful, the talent that there is within our folks. And I'm looking at my neighbor sitting right there in the front row, Chip, who is a community leader in our district. By the way, BioBus, have you seen it? It's on 231st. It's right there. It's right there. You could just walk in.
You literally can just walk in.
It's so cool, So taking advantage of these opportunities where we're interfacing with children. Our kids love basketball. They love basketball. And so those huddles, those are an opportunity to be like, hey, where you can make a lot of money? CTE, right? Like you can do a technical training, technical education. But I also, I'm thinking about the migrants that are flowing into our city, the new New Yorkers who are going to be the source of, the thriving of the future of our city, right? As previous waves of migrants have been. Have we ever done a survey of immigrants in New York City and what are the professions that they come with? I can tell you just anecdotally how many folks are nurses back in their home country, they're electricians in their home country, they're plumbers in their home country. Plumbing doesn't speak English, neither does electricity, right? So what are we doing to make sure that we are creating pipelines for these folks who are coming into our city, a city that has lost nearly over 500,000 people since the pandemic? What are we doing to make sure that they take over those jobs and they help our city to thrive.
Can I just tag on really quickly? And I think the 2 points that Councilmember Sanchez made, the city has so many assets that we are just letting fall to the wayside, that we really sometimes don't even see, that get sold because we are no longer maintaining them as a municipality. And we really have great assets that we can be transforming, like the Kingsbridge Armory, that we can be more inclusive of young people or different stream job pipelines or apprenticeship models, like at the Hunts Point Terminal Market. There's major investments being made across this borough and city where we can at least spark some interest and really create some revenue generation and generational wealth here in the Bronx. And then to that last note about our migrants coming in, our new New Yorkers, the work authorization process, and that's out of our jurisdiction and out of the municipality's jurisdiction, but it is the crucial part that any immigrant coming into this country is really needing a way to credential match. And I've spoken about this over the years, and it's really difficult. I know Abby Jo can also speak to finding ways to credential match is critical in maintaining the bolstering we can see economically, whether it's our local economies or a larger nationwide economy, being able to match those credentials to ensure that we can take a degree from another country and say, you match 12 of the 25 credential points that we need, but here is a class with a local CBO that can help you upscale your current credential list to go back into the workforce. And that's something that I think as a nation, we're not quite maintaining or keeping up with, but it's something we should look at and prioritize.
Thank you, council members. Abby, I want to bring this back a little bit also to the specifically kind of the topic at hand around expanding access to tech careers for folks in the Bronx. And from your vantage point at City Hall, you're working on, or you have as one of your tools, the amazing Tech Talent Pipeline Program. But I think, again, a lot of folks don't know about all the initiatives that have been incubated there, that have spread out across the city, including the CUNY 2X Tech Initiative, CUNY, which has actually been incredibly successful in helping more CUNY students break into tech careers, but it's still really small scale. And the funding was for 5 years, and it's in flux right now. I was just putting that out there. I'd say at the same time, I want to ask you a little bit more about, Abby, the other things that you
Can I just say, I mean,
please.
the mayor made a commitment to expand CUNY 2X in the state of the city. So
Yes.
we're very much looking forward to expanding it to new campuses.
Yes.
I wouldn't say it's we're still very committed to
that is really exciting to hear, and it's really an impressive commitment.
And in part, because of the incredible work that Lehman College did in its 2X over 3 years and really embedding it into the university and creating opportunity and really making sure that graduates have degrees and working closely with industry. And one of the things I'm excited about Kingsbridge is it's right by Lehman, and there can be a huge, incredible partnership in terms of creating tech pipelines, both into the occupations that require the higher education, but also those occupations such as cyber analyst or data analyst that may not require a 4-year degree.
So no, I think that's an incredible opportunity as well. And I guess that's what I wanted to ask you about, Abby, is that, I'm not going to ask you to comment on the budget process next year. No, definitely not. But I wanted to ask you about, where you kind of see the need for more going forward. There's a lot that's just within your purview to figure out, building on the goal of the 30,000 new apprenticeships, for example. Helping the CUNY 2X Tech Initiative continue and build on the successes of the many components of that program. Opportunities to ensure that the city's workforce development organization, the nonprofit organizations that are doing so much this work on the ground, are able to meet the demand, to grow, but also to help more of those residents, as we heard from earlier, that actually aren't able to participate in those programs because of digital literacy gaps and other challenges. So I want to ask you what are your key priorities when it comes to, for those folks in the Bronx right now, working age adults, as well as young people that are maybe just considering these paths, what are your priorities now to make sure there is a pathway for you into the tech sector if you want it? What should the city be kind of focused on in the months ahead?
Yeah, as everyone's been pointing out here, there's not one silver bullet. It's multiple things that have to happen at once. And the good news is they're happening at once here in the Bronx. The question is how to scale it so they reach every Bronxite who needs it. And so I think we cannot underestimate the fact that we have 2 chancellors, both at the New York City Public Schools and at CUNY, that are very, very focused around student career success. That has not always been the case, and that's been a real shift that we've seen over time, and particularly been embraced by this administration, which I think is super exciting because, frankly, that's where a lot of our resources go as a city into our traditional education programs. So the more that we can move them to really build in computational thinking, digital literacy, beginning, in K-12, but lifelong is super important. So continuing to support efforts that do that really focus on that. Second, I think we need industry in the room, and we need we need people in the Bronx in industry, and very much in the industry places. So getting students out of the classroom into industry, and that's the place where apprenticeship's the gold standard. So there was a real intentionality about saying we're going to hit 30,000 new apprenticeships by 2030, because we feel like if we can do that, we can start really creating apprenticeship as a meaningful pathway into careers of the future, because we know that the labor market is moving so quickly, and you have to continually learn. And so by the time we sort of talk to employers and say, what do you need in tech? Like what, and then we translate that into curriculum, and then we get that into the classroom. It may very well be out of date. So that linear model that we've done for so long, we need to rethink and really get to a more braided model where we're braiding earning and learning, beginning in high school, and really having that credentialed in a way. And that's where CUNY can play a huge role, because if they can start developing credentials, as Evelyn was pointing out, I know Eddie and other folks from CUNY are thinking about, if we can really have credentials that can be gained either in the workplace, whether it's with prior learning or what I love to say concurrent learning, gained in the workplace or gained in the academic setting, but recognized both in the workplace and the academic setting, and have that be the same credential, that will work much better for employers overall, because they can source candidates from multiple places, and for job seekers because they have more flexibility. So that's where we sort of have to get to as a system, and apprenticeship helps to push that along. And where I see growth in apprenticeship is really in tech is a key factor in that, because right now we don't have very many state-registered apprenticeships in technology here in New York State. And we really need to build that. Additionally, we wanted to do youth apprenticeship as well. And I will just end by one of the things that the state legislature did in June was pass community hiring legislation. And I don't want, it's a complicated legislation, but in short, it basically suggests that the city can use its purchasing power to ensure that New Yorkers get hired, and so we can use our purchasing power to drive economic mobility. Now, traditionally, that's been part of the project labor agreements for construction, but this is for all of cities' purchasing power, which includes their business services contracts, which includes technology. And so making sure that we have strong referral and training networks for those contractors is going to be absolutely key. We thought it was super important because it creates a job generation for multiple industries, and I really want to see it grow and thrive in the tech industry. And so we'll be working with the many folks in this room as well as outside that room of really figuring out how do we make sure that we never have the case where a contractor says, I can't find the talent, I can't find the apprentice, because we know there's just too much talent that goes untapped that's there, and making sure that they're ready to go for that opportunity.
Thanks, Abby. I think we have just time for a couple of questions. We have just a few minutes left. So same deal as before. If you could lift your hands up, say your name, organization you're with. We'll start right there in the third row. Thank you. And just try to keep your questions brief so we can get to at least one or two. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Pedro Suarez, and I'm the program director at Lift New York, which is a career and financial coaching program for parents in the Bronx and beyond. The question that I had really touches on the strategic partnerships that was brought up earlier. And the question that I have is, these conversations I think are great, and I'll double tap on the fact that I think everyone can agree that a lot of the things that we're discussing today are very much needed. My question is more of after this, right? Like after this, how are we bringing people together to make sure that we're connecting the dots and promoting that collaboration and investing in that collaboration? Because what we invest in is what we actually prioritize. And so that's the question that I wanted to pose, is how are we creating those spaces for those strategic partnerships between community-based organizations, CUNY, hospitals, schools, DOE, because that's really what's going to drive this work forward.
I mean, I'm not CUNY, but I mean, I think what we as individual members are like, and I don't want to speak for the administration, but as the administration, like we try to pull in our local CBOs and community partners into the spaces that we're trying to develop. So, you know, if BioBus comes to the stops at my school, I'm pulling in each of those PTAs and I'm inviting each of the local CBOs that I know have parents, families, students to experience BioBus in that community. I think that is one of the strategic ways to pull in like local groups that are maybe tunnel vision, only focused on their case management or the issues that they have tasks at hand to deal with in the community, and creating a more holistic purview of how they can be a partner. And I think additionally, we always take feedback from local partners on what else we could be doing. Equally as like my local CBO might only be focused on case management or, you know, healthy food opportunities. If they come to me and they ask for a more expansive event to pull more partners into the room or to create a different dialogue or a more expansive dialogue, that's a natural partnership that might not occur, or an event that might not happen without someone coming to me to ask how else could we be leading a conversation. So those are the ways that I think about, and I try to lead with make sure you're the person that is bringing other people to the room of opportunity that you're in, even though they might not be in it with you. So I always try to lead with, if I'm in a space that brings up either tech or healthy food or workforce, and I know of a group or 3 people that could take advantage of an opportunity there or be a good natural connection, you know, that's how I approach a lot of this work.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would add to that. Prior to running for office, I was part of 2, they're not organizations, they're coalitions, perhaps is a better word, that were focused on collective impact, right? So one was the JARC, the Jerome Avenue Revitalization Collaborative. Thank you, Bronx Community College, and the 100 organizations across the district, but BCC is such an important partner there, who came together, different sectors, different service providers, different, you know, strange bedfellows, right? Sorry, warning, I will have a lot of romantic analogies for seemingly no reason, so that's just one of them. So strange bedfellows coming together and meeting regularly, coming up with goals for how we can strengthen the economic footprint of the West Bronx together, right, on the one hand. Then there was the School District 9 had a collective impact working group. Again, strange bedfellows who were in a forced marriage because funders said that, you know, they had to find organizations to work, see, romantic, had to find organizations to work with together. And again, we're focused on how do we fight the digital divide and how do we improve outcomes in community School District 9, right? So all that to say, I think that the philanthropic sector has an important role here, as you all who work in nonprofits write your grants for, you know, projects that you have forthcoming. Think about that, right? It's so important, these partnerships across academia, across community-based organizations, service providers. Build that into your projects, build that into your proposals, so that you are, you know, intentionally having to maintain these partnerships. But in addition to that, our role to just add to what the council member says, sorry, again, romantic analogy, strings attached, right? So every time that we are providing a grant, every time that we are legislating, every time that we are, you know, putting forth policy from our vantage point, which is just to try to make the administration to do things, you know, making sure that we are attaching the strings that we want. And so I'm, you know, local law 97 looms very large in my mind right now, right? We have a responsibility in the city of New York to basically electrify our city, right? And everywhere else in the country, we're talking about cars, right? The electrification of cars. In the city, it's about the electrification of buildings. It's about the cleaning up our carbon footprint. So what strings is the city attaching to the requirement to green our buildings in this way, right? And so we have the New York City Accelerator, which is working with the largest buildings to make sure that they know and they have the technical know-how and access to financial resources to green their buildings. But we can fund pilot programs. We can fund and bring folks together. We can convene. So I think, it depends on the sector you're in. All roads lead to Rome, so not romantic.
Romantic.
Rome is right.
Oh, that was bad, Eli.
Success. But I think it really depends on your sector, and we all have different roles to play. But if we value the role of partnerships and driving in the direction of driving in the direction of greening, or not, well, greening our city, but making sure that there's access to tech in more spaces, then I think we can get there.
I would just say there's additionally a number of RFPs. There's the Kingsbridge RFP that is out, so that's a real opportunity to think about partnership, and we all know this work only gets done through partnership. Additionally, the Workforce One RFP is going to come out, and it's been tweaked a bit to really encourage sort of innovation and some partnership with folks on the ground, so I encourage everyone to take a look at that. Additionally, DYCD's RFP for a couple of their programs is going to come out at some point, and they're getting feedback and comments on that now. So if you're particularly working with youth, both in school and out of school, there's opportunities there. And then again, to community hiring, once the legislation gets signed, there'll be rulemaking. So really trying to figure out how we do it in a way that lifts up communities of the Bronx is going to be super important.
That's great. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Could you all join me in really giving a great hand of applause? I wish we could keep this going because this has been fantastic. There's so many great questions. We wish we could get to everybody here. I do want to say just really quickly a big thank you to Amazon again for sponsoring this. This is the first of CUF's 5-borough forum series on expanding access to tech careers. We think this is such an important issue and an opportunity for the city, and so much needs to be done. We're going to be having this in every borough because we want to keep this going. And I also want to say that, especially in light of the great question that we had and the great answers about partnerships, CUF is just beginning a major research project that's totally focused on how do we expand employer partnerships at CUNY. I know CUNY is just one piece of this conversation, but we are really getting into that topic. We've kind of touched on it in a lot of reports, but we're really hoping to move this one thing forward. If anybody in this room has specific ideas, or if you think you want to have a conversation about how we can do this on the employer partnerships with CUNY, please reach out to me. If you have ideas for this topic that we had today around expanding access to tech careers that we should be thinking about, writing about, researching, please let us know. My email is jbowles@nycfuture.org. We'd love to hear from you. But I'll end there. I will say really quickly, in case you happen to make it out to Staten Island, which is the site of our next forum in the 5-borough forum series.
We're not going to go to Staten Island. No one here is. That's too far. Are you chartering a boat to get us, or a plane?
Well, we do have a ferry.
Oh.
And the ferries have been expanding, and so we think we can get people there.
Ferry,
November 14th, if you're around, and then the one after that's going to be in Queens on December 11th. The one in Brooklyn will be on January 11th, we think, and then we're going to finish in Manhattan. But it was so great to start here in the Bronx. I want to thank our panelists for being here. This was a great discussion. A big thank you to Eli, our moderator. A big thank you to Stephanie Arivalo, our great coordinator and events manager, and everybody at CUF for putting this on, and a thanks to Ostos as well. So thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.